You're watching Star Wars Day with Pops. Right. Well, folks, I hope you're enjoying Star Wars Day, hanging out and talking about OG stuff from the very beginning all the way through. But now we get to take a little side detour to something I think it's super cool. I didn't really know much about. And I had this guy with me, Brandon, the anime guy, hanging out. Super awesome to have you with me, my brother. Thank you for doing this and teaching me about something I didn't really know much about.
You bet. It's always good to be here with you, pops. And yeah, this little creation of what an animated version of TIE Fighter, had there been a show called TIE Fighter, would have been, and it is so good.
Indeed, I was really impressed by a lot of it. We'll just kind of ping through a little bit of some of the highlights and stuff like that. So before we get too far into it, what's sort of the deal on the animation company or anything like that? Do you know much about like the creative team behind all this and why they did it or anything like that?
This was a one-man passion project.
Wow,
It took
awesome.
him 4 years to do it, doing this on weekends, and the style that he went for was a early '80s Venus War anime style, very specific from the time period. And for the most part, he hits most of the cues and most of the style, especially when you start looking at the ships, the shading, the probe droid, and then all the action with the weapons fire and everything like that. It fits in pretty well.
Yeah, I was really reminded of like my love of like Star Blazers with a couple of the shots, like
Mm,
just that kind of feel. And like I think you're right with the design and the shading. I think is really the key. But look at these, just the details. I won't play it, so let me take the graphic down so everybody can even see a little bit more. I was
yeah.
just so blown away. And again, it's set to a lot of music, so I'm not going to really be able to play a lot of it, guys, because they'll flag that and that kind of thing. But this is free on YouTube. I'll put the link in there for you so you can catch this for yourself. It's only like 7 minutes long, so it's pretty short. That includes like a
Yeah.
little intro and outro. Um, how did you just stumble across this? Was there like some promotion? I wasn't really plugged into the anime circuit much at all, so it wouldn't have, well, obviously it wasn't on my radar screen.
This is something that well, it's been around for about 7, 8 years now. I've seen it a long time ago, but it never really triggered in my brain until I got back into anime myself here a few years ago, and this was pointed out to me. And I've when it goes to Star Wars, the time frame that I was massively into it was the 90s. So you have the resurgence of Star Wars from the LucasArts standpoint. So you got the X-Wing and the TIE Fighter games, and then the Doom clones and all that came out at the time. But
Mhm.
then you also are right at the very beginning of the expanded universe books, which, let's be fair and honest, that is canon. It should forever be canon, and for me, it always will be. So this animated short is based around the TIE Fighter game as far as the look, the feel, everything on it. So the screen that we're seeing here is obviously a tactical display, but all of the indicators and the writing is of course from the game. It's in that style.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I absolutely, when I've thought about it now, I love the TIE Fighters. They're nice, sleek, beyond fast, and then the TIE Interceptors are just wicked sick little speed demons with quad lasers. But the one that's probably the most underrated is the TIE Bomber, and we get to
Mm.
see why through the shots that were done with this.
So let's just
But
get a little sequence here going of just him. So good.
yes, it is. Yeah, the attention to detail put into this 7 minutes of animation, I can see why it took him 4 years to do this with just doing this on on weekends. Yeah, putting all that time together, yeah, it's probably about a good 6 months or so of actual work that went into this. And if we could get a Star Wars story based in the TIE fighter or even the X-Wing or X-Wing versus TIE fighter era of how the games look, how they played, and translate it into a show, that I think that would be something that most Star Wars fans would absolutely love and adore, as opposed to the
And
Galactic Star Cruiser closing down today
oh,
in
yeah,
September.
yeah. But so, and again, we kind of have a moratorium to kind of bash Disney and KK and get into all that kind of
Yes.
stuff for today. I don't want to get into that, but I would
Well,
say
if it was interesting to
to
hear.
extend what you were saying
Yes.
though, there's an episode of Mandalorian with this X-wing pilot,
Hmm.
and it's just kind of like dropped on the middle of the show, and it's kind of like, well, we could have actually have had an opening sequence that was about 5 minutes long that could have been just completely ripped from this short of this rogue star destroyer that's out there. You have this quick conflict between TIE fighters and X-wings, and you just have this quick little dogfight that really kind of gets you into the cockpit. Whatever, it seems like just a total softball to sell some toys and some
Oh yeah.
action figures or even a game, and then cut to the Mandalorian script in its entirety. Like, you didn't have to really change anything. You really could have just had this one sequence. This little short film you shared with me just made me feel like that. I know you're like, this was like this because like just like this little sequence of events that you just know are happening, but we were never really kind of put into the seat like this, other than like through video games,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah. In the video games, you see how everything in the cockpits, both for, both for the Alliance vessels and for the Imperial vessels, are set up, and the game was extremely detailed. That was back at the time when LucasArts was at the peak of their game on everything, and it was just great. And yeah, the facial animations, the style, the look, brilliant. It's so good.
Yeah, I really had a good time just sort of kind of getting into, and here's your TIE bomber sequence that we're kind of coming up on. So I wanted to kind of at least get as close to there. Let's see here. Sometimes it's easy. I was reminded of how good I love the interior of the control room of Star Destroyers. It's just
Yeah.
so, I just love all of this. I mean, since like the first film, really, even because even in Jedi, you don't really get nearly as much as you do in the transition from New Hope to Empire Strikes Back, where you have just a lot of that world building of what a Death Star is and what's in on the inside and how the Imperial world sort of exists. And
Yeah.
now the distraction is like making it like office life and working in buildings and bureaucracy and whatever. I'm like, no, I want to get back to like, can the guy be the guy that works on the coils on one of these gunners? Like, can I get the guy that's doing maintenance on a TIE fighter? That's way more interesting to
The
me.
inner workings of the ship. My
Yeah.
understanding with the size of the ship, it's fairly good size, but probably not the biggest starship ever created in all the various different sci-fi fandoms. But it definitely has a ton of people work on it. From what I remember, it's supposed to be crewed by like 30,000 people, can have a 10,000 trooper drop, and several hundred, if not close to a thousand of these TIE fighter variety types of ships. That's just a standard Star Destroyer. And looking at it there, the combat mechanics for a Star Destroyer is a lot like how it is for a classic battleship. It's all manual aiming with everything, but with that, the amount of firepower that's loaded onto a Star Destroyer is immense, and we see it come to bear at the end of this. With taking out the capital ships of the rebels.
Yeah,
So
this
Star
is
Destroyers were not to be trifled with.
no, no, and you just get these great sequences where I mean, yeah, I was just so impressed with how much fun this was.
Yeah,
It was just pure dogfight euphoria, being able to just have these, look at them coming in just like a swarm of bees, and just an incredible overwhelm element.
yeah, and that's that was the whole idea behind the Empire, as far as the tactics go. With the type of tactics that they could use, specifically. They have the swarm mentality. They didn't want to spend a ton of money on the starfighter because people are replaceable. Things like that are replaceable a lot easier. Whereas the Alliance, they had to go with they don't have as many people, and they want to try and stretch everything as much as possible. Hence why regular TIE fighters and TIE interceptors didn't have shields. But there was a tweet that I retweeted recently that basically said, if you had to make a choice between being an X-wing pilot or a TIE fighter pilot, be a TIE fighter pilot, because a TIE fighter pilot is Chad. It takes a lot of guts to go out there and to be the best of the best with no shielding and take out X-wings as often as they do. Considering that they have shielding, their shielding is pretty terrible. If only it takes 2 to 3 bursts of a TIE fighter, twin laser cannon to take you down.
Yeah. So this is the channel, Paul Johnson's channel. There's some different things here. Again, in the link you can see. Just been, this is kind of like some older videos. Not a whole lot. It's been real active until just a few weeks ago. I thought that was interesting.
He's recent again.
Yeah, he's a couple of things he's done in the last 3 weeks. There's a couple of things from like 6 months ago, a year ago. So you have a lot of stuff that's pretty old that dates back to what we were getting into.
Yes.
So I really enjoyed just seeing some of the different things. But he does have here at the top as well, which might be of interest to you folks, is this live stream over at channel number 2. So you hit channels, you can come in here and try to find channel number 2, I guess. I couldn't find where that would be. So, but yeah, it was very interesting. There's information. Oh, here, live stream channel. So go to the about button, hit live stream channel, and go over there. And that'll take you over here to channel number 2. And yes, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something that he's kind of just been dabbling with from here and there. But that's interesting. That
is cool. That he's getting back into it and putting stuff up there again. I've seen his R-Type video. R-Type, of course, being classic Ireme arcade game from the 80s that to this day still gets new adaptations and final versions of the game and all that stuff. So yeah, he's a very talented person.
I would say that for only 7 minutes, he really did such a good job of trying to pack in a lot of information. There's no real. I mean, it's like set to like a musical score, but you have so much information that's actually being conveyed in a beautiful way. Very talented man, very, very talented animator. I was really impressed with some of that. What did you think about some of the decisions he did to like have like a silhouette of the TIE fighter's face kind of put in there at times?
It's very artistic.
Yeah.
And it works. It works with what he's
trying to humanize them, right? Trying to humanize them.
Well, yeah, they are human, and when you dig deeper into the lore of Star Wars, especially with the EU books and all that, and talking about Thrawn, Thrawn's unique in a lot of ways. He works for the Empire, but he's not of the Empire. Whereas a lot of these people, they not only work for the Empire, but they fully believe in it. So you'll have those that are, they'll be the xenophobic types, but then you have others like Thrawn who are doing it more or less just to maintain order or to have some semblance of order through the galaxy, which is basically the same as with Tarkin, which unfortunately, if I remember correctly, doesn't get explained much in the EU, but at least in the more recent books that have been done, there is a book about Tarkin, and he is by far one of the most fascinating people. The only other person that can really truly go toe to toe with Vader, and the only person besides Thrawn that Vader has some semblance of respect for and is willing to take orders from. The only other person is the Emperor. Not even, to an extent, not even Thrawn has that ability with Vader.
Yeah.
But you get to see the inside of the Star Destroyer, how much gear just a standard Star Destroyer carries. It's incredible. It's an incredible amount of firepower and equipment and personnel.
I thought this was a great shot, being able to be inside the Star Destroyer and having them lining up some AT-ATs and things like that, and then having these corridor shots where you're seeing this movement just zipping through. Oh, I loved it. There you go, having them suit up.
Yeah,
I really
most definitely.
But this was funny that the conflict's coming, and then there is a great shot. I had the right button, but there's a great shot when the X-wing gets hit, and it's just the droids. the George Dome just flies off. It was great. Took a moment to have like a cheap shot at it there, so it was just kind of fun.
Yeah, well, it's part of the gig with flying an X-wing.
Yep,
You take
there it
well
goes.
with
Bam,
anything you
I'm right
take the
there.
risks.
Yeah,
But out of all the Tie fighters, out of all the Tie fighter types, the ones that I like the most are either the Tie Defender, which is basically a tri-wing with six lasers and a whole slew of missile or proton torpedo launchers, or I would have to go with the Tie Advanced, not Vader's Tie Advanced, but the production Tie Advanced. They're the only ones that the Empire didn't include shielding with, so you could. They were, of course, set apart for the best of the best of the best, sir, pilots.
I was just really impressed with so many elements of this little short. It just made me want more. Basically,
Yeah,
which is what you want, right? You want to have this. Let's see, like that's that shot, like you were saying earlier, where it's just you get this, you know, compare and contrast with them going in formation, going one direction. Now the rebels going a different direction, where you get a little Y wing, you get a little X wing action on top of each other before they engage one another, and it's just absolute dogfight euphoria. Just loved it. Good stuff.
yes, yes, indeed, and you know, it's
How do you
this is
feel
type of
about
stuff that can be done. If they really truly want to do it, it could be done, but the will is just not there at the moment for that, unfortunately.
how do you feel or would recommend like other Star Wars anime?
Oh, I would dig it, and I'm not afraid to say I did really enjoy Star Wars Visions, the first one, not the second one.
Okay.
The the studios that they contracted to do that are absolute masters of their craft, and they're the type that don't tolerate telling a stupid story or pushing certain forms of agendas. Which, from what I understand, in the second one, I think that's why they decided to not go with primarily Japanese studios again, because they could
Mhm.
get people that would do other things. But when you even with that one being from Disney, overall it was an actual good product, and there are certain stories within it that did work very well, and of course the styling of some of the studios are very similar to what we saw, or the way that this gentleman does stuff is very similar to how they were doing it back in the 80s. But even with modern techniques, they could do something spectacular focused around an actual fighter squadron, or the life of a trooper or a pilot on a star destroyer, and then going into action and having a full action sequence with with your starships going pew pew and things going boom.
I wouldn't even. I mean, you've watched it. I never watched Visions. It's kind of like one of those to do list things I just keep not getting to. But
Yeah.
the first volume is described as anime, right? Japanese
Yeah.
animation studios. They list Kamikaze Duga, a studio Colorido,
Yep.
Geno Studio, Kinema Citrus, Production IG, Trigger, and then with the second volume there's no mention of anime. They just go to other art studios.
Yeah.
So
There was
they do
one
one in
that was done
Spain,
by.
Ireland,
Yeah.
Aardman over in UK, which I'm a big fan of Aardman, actually. I like Aardman's work. Um, one in South Korea, France. So it's just different. I mean, so, if you were interested in the anime part, obviously the volume one is the only one that's going to appeal to you because the second one is their attempt, in my opinion, to obviously just try to branch out into some other stuff. Whether it works
Hmm.
or not, I can't say I haven't watched it. So, um, I'm open to again. I'm not again today's not about trying to criticize the studios and who owns it or anything like that. It's like I'm interested to see more voices and visions get out there of what Star Wars means to them. If that's a mechanism that we could see positive things, and so be it. Like this little short film was, that
Oh
would be great.
yes.
So it's awesome.
Yes,
It's
it
good.
was. It's a good one. If anybody hasn't seen it in full, definitely go check it out. It's well worth your time. And then definitely at least check out the first Visions, because it was, considering everything, it was really good. There are a lot of great, short stories within it. Some of them are obviously more designed for people of, either younger age or a different age, but every single one of them, you can tell that they had the spirit of Star Wars within them. They wanted to tell the best story possible, even within certain confines placed upon them. And I can tell you, out of all the studios that you mentioned, Studio Trigger is the most out there, and Production IG is probably the most celebrated.
Hmm.
The other guys, they all put out. Almost every other studio puts out several new shows almost every season. So every four
Hmm.
quarters there's something new from them.
Okay.
But considering, yeah, Trigger and Production IG are probably the best quality ones out of them. But the first one, the first episode is very reminiscent of an Akira Kurosawa movie.
Hmm.
So if you like that, or like some of the ideas within it, definitely check it out.
Everything is in the description to make sure you're connected to Brandon and all things anime, my friend. He is my brother at arms in doing this content creation. It's something that I'm not well versed in. I would rather defer you to an expert. So he is my go-to in that regard. Now you mentioned the '90s a little bit, kind of being your sweet spot.
Hmm.
Which is the film that you saw in theaters first?
I saw the original trilogy re-released in theaters in the 90s. So I was
Okay.
there when they did the special editions for that, and it was, looking back on it now, I wish I could have seen the original, but I wasn't around when the first one came out, and I was barely around when the third one came out. But it was still probably one of the coolest things to ever see. I never would have thought that I would have seen Star Wars on the big screen the way that we did. It was so much fun to be able to go see that, and then of course Empire, then Return of the Jedi, and then it did get me hyped up for the prequels that he was working on. And I did go see all three of the prequels opening night, or the
Hmm.
Thursday previews,
Hmm.
and over time, I can say that I do like the Phantom Menace, but I prefer it with a Jar Jar less cut. And I I got my original box DVD set of them, and I just skipped over all the Jar Jar stuff, and it was fine.
Hmm.
And of course, Attack of the Clones, it's got its problems, but Revenge of the Sith it's as close as George could get to the original without having his wife Marcia there to help keep him in line. It was good. But the things that really got me back into, or really kicked Star Wars off for me in the 90s, were the games. Specifically
Hmm.
getting our first computer back in, '94, having the X-Wing Collector's CD-ROM edition, and then getting TIE Fighter, and then getting, as I said, all the Doom clones, Dark Forces, Dark Forces 2, Jedi Knight 2. That era from about the mid 90s up through, I would say, even up to probably about 2010 was peak. And then of course, checking out the books, getting schooled on the EU books. It's been a long time since I've read the Thrawn trilogy, the original Thrawn trilogy, but
Hmm.
it's well worth it. And for anybody out there that likes to collect, definitely try to find the original books from your secondhand bookstores that are in reasonable shape. Because if you're
Yeah.
getting ones that say Legends on it, then they're the more
That's the
worthless
modified.
variety of them.
Yeah. And again, we have a whole video clip with Stone Cold Loki, who kind of goes through some of
Nice.
the EU and some highlights. We talk about the Thrawn trilogy extensively. I actually just reread it the weekend before we're filming this, so a couple weeks ago from you guys seeing it, and reread the comic books too. So there's a comic book adaptation of Heir of the Empire, which I warn people, issue number 1 is very expensive because that's the first
From
appearance of
Dark Horse.
Thrawn in it. Yes, and it's the first appearance of Thrawn in a comic book. So issue number 1 of Heir to the Empire in the comic book form is very expensive, but you should be able to find trades at a reasonable price if you want to
Yeah.
just kind of do it for that kind of fun.
Or the digital
But yeah,
version from Dark Horse.
yeah, there's stuff like that, and it's fun. It's a great way to, as you say, we have different gateways of how we all came into Star Wars, what pieces that we enjoyed, and things like that. I think it was really cool that you were able to, part of what brought you into Star Wars was through the games and through the interaction and the dogfights and ships and all that, and then you come across a short film like this, 10 years later, more closer to 15 years later, I guess, or at least 10.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh man, this is like so my speed. This is so cool. It has, yeah.
Exactly. It really was.
Great recommend, my friend. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and doing this. We will add some commercials on the backside of this, as always. We're having fun with all the retro elements of today. Find something that you're enjoying. Please feel free to share. Whether or not you catch one of our live streams or we're catching all this after the fact, we appreciate it. Make sure you're connected to this guy. And thanks so much for watching, everybody. I am Pops.
The future of laser games is here. Laser tag with incredible 100-foot firing range. Engage force shield or power up for the ultimate laser blast. The future is here. Laser tag. You're it. Batteries not included. Train to be a rebel soldier with Star Wars laser tag.
Cadets ready. Power up.
Fire single or continuous bursts over 50 feet. Train by yourself or with a rebel assault team. Use the force in laser tag. Star Wars laser tag. Batteries not included.
Pre-order the limited edition PS4 today. For the players.
I was very young when Star Wars came out. My memory is, full of holes, Swiss cheese, from that age. I don't remember seeing the trailer for the movie. I don't even remember asking my mom or begging her to take us to go watch it. I just remember being at the theater and staring at the screen when the music starts. And that giant Star Wars logo comes flying out into space, and the opening crawl, just starts going up. Now, being that young, I was not the best reader in the world, so I may have understood about a third, none of it. For the longest time, I thought Leia's ship was called the Custodian. Believe me, I caught flack for that later on. From that day, I don't remember the entire movie. Just key scenes that stood out in my mind. Oh, and the part where I went to the bathroom by myself only to come back and find different people sitting in our seats. It's fine. I'm fine. I wasn't traumatized at all. After finding my family in one of the many other screens and, getting over the thought I was abandoned like Joe Dirt, we went on to finish the movie. It was an amazing experience. I remember the first ignition of Luke's lightsaber. It absolutely blew my mind. The jailbreak and trash compactor scene, the escape battle with the TIE fighters. Oh, and the trench run. Just key moments that grabbed a hold and never let go. I can honestly say that movie was a spark that lit the fire for my love of science fiction and most things nerdy.
Suggest a new strategy. Only different in your mind.